Here with my German friend Anke, and she is going to teach me how to make a very special recipe. This is her grandmother's recipe. She even has the recipe written in German, and this is a summer strawberry cake that we're going to make today. And I just want to run through some of the ingredients that we have here, but before that, Anke, how do you say this in German, the name of the cake, please?
Name of the cake is Erdbeerkuchen.
Okay, that's a mouthful. Now what I want to point out to you is this is homemade vanilla that Anke makes. She also does vanilla sugar, so this is going to be a really special cake. However, Anke told me that this cake is very common and very popular throughout Germany, and there are many variations of it.
First thing we're doing in Germany, ingredients are measured. It's not a cup of this, half a cup of that. It's 75 grams, 100 grams. 100 grams, we're adding 75 grams of margarine. Could use butter, but I prefer for this cake. I'm adding 75 grams of sugar. I wanted to say German cakes are not as sweet as American cakes, but I just overshot the sugar, so this one is sweeter than usual. We're adding 2 eggs. Now it's going to get mixed. That's the first part that gets mixed. The first ingredients are now mixed. First stage looks, it's runny. All it is, it's butter, eggs, and sugar. You want a light colored, foamy consistency, and that's the first stage of the batter. Now comes the second stage. Next thing is we're going to mix or combine the baking powder with the flour and the salt. Just make sure that the baking powder is totally distributed through the flour. And a flat teaspoon of baking powder. If you look here, this is a heaping. That's what the edge on the baking powder can is for. Now it's flat. That goes in. A pinch of salt. Now I mix it together so that everything is distributed through the flour so that there are no lumps, there are no pockets of baking powder. A word to baking powder is moisture and heat activated both. So it starts acting the minute fluids are added. It continues acting and rising as soon as it goes into the oven. So you don't want that much time between adding the moisture and the oven. I make my own homemade vanilla, and the recipe calls for 1 teaspoon. In Germany, you don't have liquid vanilla, you have vanilla sugar. So I improvised, since here vanilla sugar is hard to get. All the liquid ingredients are in. Now we're adding the flour, salt, baking powder mix. Start on low because you don't want flour flying everywhere. We're scraping down the sides. Everything needs to be incorporated. At this point, once everything is in there, we just give it a little. It's a little runny for my taste, so I'm going to add just a little bit more flour, just plain flour. I usually just want to add a teaspoon or tablespoon at a time. If it's too dry, then you have to add more liquid. Once something is in, you can't take it out. Be on the cautious side when you put it in. This is thicker than pancake batter. It's about like a cake batter or a muffin batter. That's the right consistency for it. So here we are. This is a pan that's used for that particular cake. If you look at it, it looks like a tart pan, but it has a trough. Look for tartlet pans on Amazon. This is generous. Okay. Now that it's sprayed, I just wipe it. It doesn't need a lot, but it needs to be in every nook and cranny, otherwise the cake won't come loose. Now we put the cake batter into the pan, and then the batter gets spread evenly, some in the trough, some on top. You want it as even as possible, and you want it everywhere. When you're ready, it evens out the batter. It also takes air out of the batter, that's why you slap it. Now, oven is preheated to 350 degrees and we're putting it on the center rack. About 20 minutes. I would say start checking after 15 minutes. You want the top a golden brown, and the cake, when it's done, will pull away from the edges of the pan. See, it's just white, but you can see the underside is already browning when you look at the edges, and it's pulled away already. We're gonna give it a few more minutes. Still too light, but the cake, for all intents and purposes, is done. I'm gonna turn them around a little bit. But if you look here, get really close, you can see that the edges are beginning to brown and they have pulled away from the pan. All we're waiting now is for which is going to be the bottom, to brown a little bit more. This is still a little light, but I can see that the edges are browned. We don't want them crispy and over browned. So what you do, you take the cake out, and it's important that you leave it in the pan because right now, to cool, because right now if you try to get it out of the pan, it's so fragile it breaks. It firms up when it's room temperature. We are now working on preparing the cake bottom to get ready for the strawberries. This is plain cornstarch. You want just a little bit on there, not much. And you just want a tiny little brush. This is too much. I go over to the sink. This is obviously too much cornstarch. You brush it off. You don't want a chalky taste. You just want it to close the pores of the cake because the strawberries will give off water. This will prevent the whole cake from getting soggy if it stands overnight or for several hours. The strawberries have to be dry. If they're wet, your cake bottom will get soggy. The bottom off so that if you set it down, it's flat. You cut them in half. And then you angle them when you put them in. You might have to squeeze and shift a little bit. You kind of want to overlap them like shingles. Don't worry if the white shows through. The glaze that we're putting on will cover that up. We're now making the glaze for the strawberry cake. Apple juice in my case. You could use just water. Water and sugar will work. You could use another juice, cranberry juice. What you don't want to use is citrus, it doesn't gel. Sugar, gelatin. I'm going to eyeball this. There is no exact science to it. Cup and a half. Just using unflavored gelatin powder, 1 envelope. In. And gelatin will clump rather quickly. So what you're doing, you're whisking it in, so that it is evenly mixed in the fluid, otherwise you have gelatin clumps. Next is sugar. Not too much. The apple juice has some sugar already in it. If you have just water, you need more sugar. Don't make it over sweet because it will take away from the flavor of the strawberries. You mix that in. You go over to the stove and bring it to a boil. Once you start cooking your glaze, don't run off. Stir constantly until it's bubbling. You'll notice that it gets a little bit thicker. That's when you want to take it over. You want to put it on the cake. Gelatin is almost ready, but if you look at it, when you whip it, the gelatin will always be foamy. It's not ready yet, it's not boiling, it's merely foam from agitating the gelatin. It's ready and it's bubbling. You want to stir it, and you have to watch your pot because it will bubble up. If it bubbles up, take it off the heat, stir it until it settles down. Once you stir it, you feel there is a little bit of resistance and stuff will stick to the bottom of the pot. Boiling glaze is now spooned over the strawberries. You want to move it along, you don't just want to dump, because then the part where you just dumped, your cake will get soggy. If it runs over the edge of the cake a little bit, it's not a big problem because it's a clear jello that won't show up. And you can see that your white spots from the cornstarch are now disappearing. After you're done, put it in the refrigerator to firm it up and let the jello set. Traditionally served with whipped cream. I'm using Cool Whip.